I saw the picture on Instagram. My parents, grinning, backstage passes dangling from their necks. Dream come true, the caption read. My dream? Lying in a hospital bed, recovering from surgery, wondering who was going to care for my twins. Could you believe they'd do that? Rain lashed against the hospital window, mirroring the storm inside me. I needed them. Leo and Luna, my 5-year-old twins, needed them. My parents, Carol and Richard, were their only family besides me. My surgery was supposed to be a routine procedure, a minor correction. But with anesthesia, someone had to watch the kids. It's just for 3 days, Mom, I'd pleaded over the phone a week before. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Leah, you know we booked those concert tickets months ago, she'd said, her voice laced with irritation. It's the reunion tour. We can't just cancel. Mom, this is my health we're talking about, and your grandchildren. Find a babysitter. Honestly, Leah, you always expect us to drop everything. It's a bit much. That much echoed in my head. A burden, that's what I was. I stared at the twins' faces plastered on my phone's lock screen. They were superheroes, capes askew, smiles wide. How could my parents abandon them, abandon me for a concert? The betrayal felt like a physical blow. What would you do? The nurse bustled in, disrupting my thoughts. Feeling any better, dear? About the same, I mumbled, forcing a smile. The pain was manageable, but the ache in my heart was unbearable. Later that day, a social worker, Ms. Davies, visited. So, Leah, regarding childcare, I explained the situation, my voice trembling slightly. Ms. Davies frowned. And you have no other family? Friends? I shook my head. Since becoming a single mom, my social life had dwindled to almost nothing. My focus was entirely on Leo and Luna. We can look into emergency foster care, Ms. Davies offered. But the thought of strangers caring for my children terrified me. Desperation clawed at me. I scrolled through my phone, searching for any possible solution. Then a name popped up. Sarah, my ex-husband's sister. We weren't close, but we were cordial. She lived nearby and had kids of her own. It was a long shot, but I had nothing to lose. Sarah answered on the second ring. I explained my predicament, my voice cracking. There was silence on the other end. Leah, I don't know. I'd have to talk to Mark. Mark, my ex, was a complicated story. Our marriage had ended acrimoniously 5 years ago. He saw the kids every other weekend, but our interactions were strained. Could I trust him? Please, Sarah, I begged. I'm desperate. She sighed. Let me see what I can do. I'll call you back. Hours crawled by. Every beep of my phone sent my heart racing, only to be met with disappointment. Okay, she said. Mark and I will take them. Relief washed over me, so profound it almost brought me to my knees. Thank you, I choked out. Thank you so much. But even as I thanked her, a seed of unease began to sprout. Why had it taken so long? What had Mark said? Something felt off. He looked tired, his eyes shadowed. They're good kids, Leah, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. We'll take care of them. I wanted to ask him what Sarah had told him, what he really thought of all this, but the words wouldn't come. I just nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. Could I trust Mark? I wasn't sure. Back home, recovering, I tried to focus on getting better, but my mind kept drifting to my parents' Instagram feed. Concert photos flooded my screen. Carol and Richard, beaming, surrounded by flashing lights and adoring fans. They looked carefree, oblivious to the turmoil they'd caused. Then, one day, an email arrived. It was a routine statement from my trust fund, a legacy from my grandmother. I scanned the numbers, my eyes widening in disbelief. There was significantly less money than I remembered. Had I miscalculated? I logged into the Trust's online portal, my heart pounding in my chest. I scrolled through the transaction history, my breath catching in my throat. There it was, a series of large withdrawals, starting 6 months ago, all made by My mother. I stared at the screen, numb. My own mother had been stealing from me. How could she? Was this how they could afford their fancy vacations and dream-come-true concerts? Fury, cold and sharp, replaced the hurt. They'd not only abandoned me in my time of need, but they'd been financially exploiting me. This wasn't just neglect, it was betrayal on a whole new level. I called my lawyer, Mr. Evans. "I need to see you immediately," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "It's about my trust fund." Mr. Evans, a seasoned attorney with a calm demeanor, listened patiently as I laid out the evidence. He reviewed the documents, his expression grim. "This is concerning, Leah. We can pursue legal action, but it could be a lengthy and expensive process." "I don't care about the cost," I said, my voice hard. "I want them to pay for what they've done." Mr. Evans nodded. "I understand. We'll file a lawsuit immediately. But be prepared, Leah. This will be a difficult battle." As I left Mr. Evans' office, my phone buzzed. It was an anonymous message. "Drop the lawsuit. You don't want to regret this." My blood ran cold. Who sent it? My parents? The story of my parents' betrayal went viral. Suddenly everyone knew about the concert, the stolen money, the abandoned twins. The online comments were brutal. How could any parents do that? They should be ashamed of themselves. Justice for Leah. But amidst the online outrage, a more sinister element emerged. I started receiving threatening messages, both online and offline. Someone was stalking me. One evening, I came home to find my apartment door ajar. My heart leaped into my throat. I cautiously pushed the door open, stepping inside. The apartment was ransacked. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, papers scattered everywhere. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and dialed 911. As I waited for the police to arrive, I noticed something lying on the floor. A photograph of Leo and Luna, their faces crossed out with red marker. Fear consumed me. This wasn't just about money anymore. Someone was trying to intimidate me, to scare me into dropping the lawsuit. But I couldn't back down. I had to protect my children. The police investigated the break-in, but they found no leads. The anonymous messages continued, growing increasingly menacing. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. Then, one day, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a USB drive. I hesitated, my heart pounding. Was it a trap? Could it contain a virus? I took a deep breath and plugged the drive into my laptop, using a burner machine, just in case. The drive contained a single file, a video recording. I clicked play. The video showed my parents, Carol and Richard, sitting in a room talking to someone off camera. It was difficult to hear what they were saying at first, but then the volume increased. "We need you to make her stop," my mother said, her voice desperate. "We'll pay you whatever it takes." "She's ruining our lives," my father added. "The lawsuit, the media, it's all too much." The person off camera responded, their voice distorted and unrecognizable. "I can make her stop, but it won't be cheap." I watched the video, my blood turning to ice. My parents had hired someone to intimidate me, to harass me, maybe even to hurt me. How far would they go? I took the video to Mr. He was shocked. "This is damning evidence, Leah. We can use this to press criminal charges." But as I considered my options, a different idea began to form in my mind. I didn't want to send my parents to jail. I wanted them to understand the pain they'd caused, to feel the consequences of their actions. I decided to confront them. I called my mother and told her I wanted to meet. She agreed, but her voice was wary. We met at a small cafe with free Wi-Fi and glass walls. The air inside was thick with unspoken tension. My parents arrived, their faces pale and drawn. "Leah," my mother said, her voice trembling. "What is this about?" I pulled out my laptop and showed them the video. They watched in stunned silence, their faces turning ashen. "How could you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "How could you do this to your own daughter?" My mother began to cry. "We didn't mean for things to go this far," she sobbed. "We were just desperate." "Desperate?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You stole from me, you abandoned my children, and you hired someone to threaten me. How is that desperate?" My father spoke for the first time, his voice hoarse. "We made a mistake, Leah, a terrible mistake. We're sorry." "Sorry," I said, shaking my head. "Sorry isn't enough." I told them about the threatening messages, the break-in, the photograph of Leo and Luna. Their faces crumpled. "We didn't know about any of that," my mother said, her voice pleading. "We swear, we didn't authorize anything like that." I didn't believe them. But I knew that sending them to jail wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't bring back the lost money. It wouldn't erase the pain. Instead, I told them I wanted them to repay every penny they'd stolen from my trust fund, with interest, and I wanted them to publicly apologize for their actions. They agreed without hesitation. They knew they were beaten. They liquidated their assets and repaid every cent they'd stolen. They also issued a public apology, admitting their wrongdoing and expressing remorse for their actions. The lawsuit was dropped, and the media frenzy died down. Slowly, my life began to return to normal, but the scars of betrayal remained. I could never fully trust my parents again, but I also knew that holding on to anger and resentment would only poison my own life. I made a decision to forgive them, not for their sake, but for my own. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or condoning their actions. It meant letting go of the bitterness and moving on with my life. It was a difficult choice, but it was the right one. The twins, thankfully, were too young to understand the full extent of what had happened. They just knew that Grandma and Grandpa weren't around as much anymore. Mark, surprisingly, became a steadfast source of support. He helped me navigate the legal complexities, the emotional fallout, the challenges of being a single parent. We even started to rebuild our relationship slowly and cautiously. Life is never perfect. There are always challenges, betrayals, disappointments, but it's how we choose to respond to those challenges that defines us. I chose forgiveness. I chose resilience. I chose to focus on the love and support that still existed in my life. And I chose to take back everything that was rightfully mine. Not just the money, but my peace of mind, my happiness, my future. So, what would you have done? Could you have forgiven them? I found a hidden folder on my mother's old cloud drive a few weeks later. Inside were years of communications, including some very interesting emails between her and a man I didn't recognize. The subject line? "The Leah problem." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about concert tickets and stolen money. This was something deeper, something far more calculated. The emails revealed a long-standing resentment my mother harbored towards me. Apparently, my grandmother, the one who set up the trust fund, had always favored me. My mother felt overlooked, undervalued. The trust fund, in her eyes, was a symbol of that favoritism. The man in the emails seemed to be some sort of advisor. He was suggesting ways to manage me, to control my life, to minimize my impact on my parents' happiness. The concert incident, the stolen money, it was all part of a larger plan. I felt a surge of anger, hotter and more intense than anything I'd felt before. This wasn't just a mistake, a moment of weakness. It was a deliberate, calculated act of malice. I traced the man's email address, using a sophisticated cybersecurity tool I'd learned about from a friend. The address led to a burner phone, registered to a fake name, but I kept digging. I eventually found a connection to a small private investigation firm, specializing in family matters. The firm's website was slick and professional, promising discretion and results. I scrolled through their client testimonials, my heart pounding in my chest. And then I saw it. A familiar name under a glowing review. Carol S. My mother had hired a private investigator to... What? Spy on me? Sabotage my life? The possibilities were terrifying. I contacted Mr. Evans again, my voice shaking with fury. We need to reopen the case, I said. I have new evidence. Evidence of premeditation, of conspiracy. Mr. Evans was skeptical at first, but when I showed him the emails and the connection to the private investigator, his expression changed. This is significant, Leah. We can pursue this, but it will be even more complicated, even more public. I don't care, I said, my voice hard. I want the truth to come out. I want everyone to know what my parents are really like. We filed a new lawsuit, alleging conspiracy and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The media went wild. Leah's Revenge, Part 2, the headline screamed. This time, my parents didn't apologize. They lawyered up and fought back, claiming the emails were misinterpreted. The private investigator was hired for personal security reasons, and I was simply trying to extort them for more money. The legal battle dragged on for months, becoming increasingly bitter and personal. My parents attacked my character, questioning my parenting skills, my financial stability, even my sanity. They painted me as a vindictive, unstable woman, obsessed with revenge. Their accusations stung, but I refused to back down. I knew I was telling the truth, and I was determined to expose their lies. Then, one day, I received another anonymous message. This time, it was different. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. They know about Sarah, the message read. Be careful. My blood ran cold. What did they know about Sarah? And what did it have to do with me? I called Sarah immediately, my voice trembling. Sarah, have you been contacted by my parents or anyone else? Sarah hesitated. Leah, I don't know what you're talking about, but I could hear the fear in her voice. I pressed her, demanding the truth. Your parents contacted me a few months ago, she confessed. They offered me money to say some things about you, to discredit you in court. What did they want you to say? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. They wanted me to say that you were an unfit mother, that you neglected the twins, that you were mentally unstable. Lies, Leah, all lies. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. My own parents had tried to bribe my ex-husband's sister to lie about me in court. The depths of their depravity seemed endless. Did you do it, Sarah? I asked, my voice tight. Did you lie about me? Sarah sobbed. No, Leah, I couldn't do it. I took their money, but I never said anything. I'm so sorry. I hung up the phone, my mind reeling. I didn't know who to trust anymore. My parents were actively trying to destroy me, and they were willing to use anyone and anything to achieve their goals. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the events of the past few months in my head, trying to make sense of it all. Then, a thought struck me. The threatening messages, the break-in, the video of my parents talking to the private investigator. What if it was all connected? What if my parents hadn't just hired someone to intimidate me? What if they'd hired someone to frame me? And then I found it. A connection to a known hacker specializing in online harassment and identity theft. The hacker had a history of framing innocent people, using fake evidence and online smear campaigns. It was the perfect way to discredit someone without leaving any trace. I realized that my parents weren't just trying to win the lawsuit. They were trying to destroy my life, to make me look like a crazy, unstable person who couldn't be trusted. I had to stop them, but how? I knew I needed proof, irrefutable evidence that would expose their scheme. I decided to take a risk, a big one. I decided to confront the hacker directly. I tracked down the hacker's online alias and sent them a message, using an encrypted messaging app. I know what you did, I wrote. I know you framed me for my parents. The hacker responded almost immediately, their tone dismissive and arrogant. You have no proof, they wrote. And even if you did, who would believe you? I knew I had to tread carefully. I couldn't threaten them or reveal too much information. I needed to lure them into a trap. I offered the hacker money, a large sum of money, to tell me the truth. I just want to know why, I wrote. Why did my parents do this to me? The hacker hesitated, then agreed to meet me in person. but they insisted on a neutral location, a public place where they could easily escape. We met at a cafe with free Wi-Fi and glass walls, the same cafe where I'd confronted my parents months earlier. The hacker was young, maybe in their early 20s, with a shifty gaze and a nervous demeanor. I started by asking them about their connection to my parents, about the scheme to frame me. The hacker denied everything at first, but as I pressed them, as I offered them more money, they began to crack. They confessed to everything, detailing the elaborate plan my parents had concocted to destroy my life. They explained how they'd fabricated evidence, created fake online profiles, and spread lies about me online. I recorded the entire conversation, using a hidden camera I'd purchased online. It was the proof I needed. I took the recording to Mr. Evans, who was stunned. "This is incredible, Leah," he said. "This is the smoking gun." We presented the recording to the court, along with all the other evidence we'd gathered. My parents' lawyers tried to argue that the recording was inadmissible, that the hacker was unreliable, that I had entrapped them. But the judge wasn't buying it. He ruled that the recording was admissible and that it clearly demonstrated my parents' guilt. The judge ruled in my favor, awarding me a substantial sum in damages and ordering my parents to publicly apologize for their actions. But the victory felt hollow. I had won the legal battle, but I had lost something far more valuable, my family. My parents were ostracized by their friends and community. Their reputation was ruined. They were forced to live in shame and disgrace. I felt a pang of guilt, a sense of responsibility for their downfall. Had I gone too far? Had I been too vengeful? I knew that I couldn't undo what had happened, but I could try to make amends. I reached out to my parents, offering them a chance to reconcile. They were hesitant at first, but eventually they agreed to meet. We met at a neutral location, a park near their new apartment. It was the first time we'd seen each other in months. The air was thick with tension. We sat in silence for a long time, staring at the ground. "We're sorry, Leah," she said, her voice trembling. "We know we hurt you. We know we made terrible mistakes." My father nodded in agreement. "We were wrong," he said. "We let our anger and resentment consume us. We lost sight of what was truly important." I looked at them, at their faces etched with regret and shame. I knew that they were telling the truth. They had. I told them that I forgave them, not for their sake, but for my own. I told them that I wanted to rebuild our relationship, to start over. It wouldn't be easy. The scars of betrayal would always remain. But I believed that we could heal, that we could find a way to move forward.